Hi everyone, I'm actually going to take a special time here to talk about a little profile in the history of the Spider Slayers. The Spider Slayers were actually a robotic automatons that were created thanks to originally Spencer Smythe and J. Jonah Jameson, and they first appeared in June 1965 in Amazing Spider-Man number 25, which was by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. They've actually been a running characters of robots against Spider-Man for the last 50 years, believe it or not. Something I always found very interesting about the Spider Slayers was, of course, besides the fact they always had a little basic design and how much Jameson was always usually responsible for their funding until pretty much the late 70s and everything else, is just how much they were always designed to attack Spider-Man, and they were always in these little robotic designs and everything. And, of course, that changed a lot once we got to the 90s. In the early 90s, there was a comic story called Invasion of the Spider Slayers, which brought back Spencer Smythe's son, Alistair Smythe, as the new user of the Spider Slayers. And what had happened is this inspired the 1990s Spider-Man animated series, where they became very prominent, and actually the storyline kicked off to reintroduce them to the comics. This didn't work out too well. In 95, they brought in the Cyber Slayers, which were kind of virtually controlled, that Alistair Smythe had been making. And actually in the late 90s, during Howard Mackey's run, he introduced Smythe back into it, some new Spider Slayers, but the storyline was okay at best, and that was kind of the last we really saw the Spider Slayers for a good decade. And of course, when Dan Slott took over Spider-Man on a full-time basis with Big Time, he brought Alistair Smythe back in, is just known as the Spider Slayer and everything, in his new team of Slayers. But as the character unfortunately met his end back in Superior Spider-Man 19, when Otto finally ended his reign and everything, and kind of sad to say, actually ended a very long, dragged-out character with the Spider Slayers. I mean, they tried really hard, but the loss of the character seemed to be kind of the end at that moment with the Spider Slayers. Of course, you can't keep the Spider Slayers down, and now we have the Spider Slayer squad that J. Jonah Jameson has once again funded, that were created by Alchemax, that are secretly being controlled by the Green Goblin during Goblin Nation. So it should be interesting to see, once the storyline's over, what will be the legacy of the Spider Slayers after this. So it'll be interesting, and hopefully they won't find as many missteps as they had for the last 15 years, but we'll see what time brings us. Hope you've enjoyed this first look at supervillains for Spider-Man, and I hope to continue these in the near future and everything. So, with that said, I will see everybody later.